Commander Jade Harrison stood at the observation deck of the Earth diplomatic vessel, Horizon, watching the shimmering rings of Neptune through the reinforced glass. The year was 2157, and humanity had finally made contact with an advanced alien civilization. The Lysarians, as they called themselves, had approached Earth with an offer of technological exchange and cultural dialogue. As head of security for the diplomatic mission, Jade took her role seriously. At 32, she had earned her position through distinguished service in the United Earth Defense Force. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her dress uniform bore the insignia of her rank and achievements. The ship's AI announced an incoming transmission from the Lysarian vessel. Jade straightened her posture, knowing that today's meeting would set the tone for humanity's future relationships with alien civilizations. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing their Lysarian counterpart. Prince Theron of the Royal House of Lysar appeared before them, his silvery skin catching the starlight. Unlike many of his people, he had chosen to serve as a diplomatic envoy rather than remain in the comfort of their homeworld. His iridescent eyes met Jade's, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. "Commander Harrison," he greeted her in perfect English, his voice carrying a musical quality that seemed common among his species. "I trust your journey has been comfortable?" "Very much so, Your Highness," Jade replied professionally, though she couldn't help noticing how his ceremonial robes shifted like liquid mercury. "We appreciate the guidance your beacons provided through the solar winds." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from both ships' systems. A massive energy signature had appeared between Neptune's moons, unlike anything either species had encountered before. As security protocols activated, Jade found herself working alongside Theron to coordinate their response. "These readings," Theron muttered, his brow furrowing as he studied the data. "They're similar to ancient warnings in our archives." Jade moved closer to examine his findings. "What kind of warnings?" "Tales of the Void Seekers," he explained, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "A race that supposedly vanished eons ago, leaving behind only destruction and mystery." As they worked together, Jade noticed how naturally they complemented each other's strengths. Where she was tactical and direct, Theron brought historical knowledge and diplomatic insight. Hours passed as they analyzed the phenomenon, their ships maintaining a safe distance while gathering data. A junior officer rushed onto the observation deck. "Commander, we're detecting multiple objects emerging from the anomaly." Through the viewport, Jade watched as dark shapes began to materialize from the swirling energy field. They moved with purpose, their designs unlike anything produced by Earth or Lysar. Theron's face paled, his silver skin taking on an almost ghostly quality. "The legends were true," he breathed. "They've returned." Jade's training kicked in as she began issuing orders to secure the diplomatic vessel. But when she turned to coordinate with Theron, she found him staring at her with an intensity that made her pause. "Commander Harrison," he said formally, "I believe our people's futures have become inexorably linked. What comes next will require trust between us that goes beyond traditional diplomatic relations." She met his gaze steadily, understanding the weight of the moment. "Then we'll face it together, Your Highness." As the unknown vessels approached, Jade realized that everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe was about to change. And somehow, standing beside this alien prince who looked at her with such trust and determination, she felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The first contact between Earth and Lysar had been carefully planned, analyzed, and negotiated. But now, faced with an ancient threat neither species fully understood, all those careful plans were rendered meaningless. What remained was the need to work together, to trust each other, and to forge a new path forward. As Jade and Theron began coordinating their ships' responses to the emerging threat, neither could deny the growing connection between them. It wasn't just diplomatic necessity or shared danger, there was something more, something that transcended the vast differences between their species and cultures. The stars beyond the viewport seemed to shine brighter as both leaders realized that this crisis might be the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated. The fate of two civilizations now rested in their hands, along with the delicate spark of something that felt surprisingly like hope. The next 48 hours aboard the Horizon were a blur of activity. Jade hadn't slept since the mysterious vessels appeared, and she suspected Theron hadn't either. The Lacerian prince had temporarily transferred to the Earth vessel to better coordinate their joint response, a move that raised eyebrows among both crews but proved tactically sound. In the ship's strategic command center, holographic displays showed the positions of the 12 Void Seeker vessels. They had arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern around Neptune, maintaining their positions with unnatural precision. Despite repeated attempts at communication, they remained silent. "There's something about their formation," Theron mused, his silvery fingers tracing patterns in the air above the hologram. "It reminds me of the ancient glyphs in our temples." Jade watched him work, admiring how his natural luminescence seemed to intensify when he was deep in thought. "Your people have encountered them before?" "Not directly," he replied, turning to face her. "But there are stories, passed down through generations, of a race that moved between dimensions. They were said to be collectors of civilizations, preserving what they deemed worthy and—" He hesitated, eliminating what they considered redundant. A chill ran down Jade's spine. "And now they're here to judge us both." "Perhaps." Theron moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But there's something else. In all our records, they never encountered two species working together. We might be the first." Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Reed's urgent voice over the intercom. "Commander Harrison, Prince Theron, we're detecting energy buildups from all 12 vessels." Jade immediately activated the ship-wide alert system. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." She turned to Theron, seeing her own determination reflected in his iridescent eyes. "Whatever happens next, we face it united." The Void Seeker ships began emitting beams of energy, not toward the Earth and Lacerian vessels, but into the space between them. The beams intersected, forming a complex three-dimensional pattern that pulsed with otherworldly light. "It's a test," Theron breathed, his eyes wide with recognition. "The patterns, they're similar to our oldest mathematical principles. They're not just judging our technology, they're testing our understanding of the universe itself." Jade studied the pattern, her tactical mind racing. "Then let's show them what our species can do together." She opened a channel to the science team. "I need every sensor we have analyzing that pattern. Work with the Lacerian scientists, share everything." As their crews scrambled to decode the Void Seeker's challenge, Jade and Theron found themselves working in perfect synchronization. His deep knowledge of Lacerian mathematics complemented her intuitive understanding of spatial relationships. Hours passed as they pieced together the puzzle, their shoulders touching as they leaned over the same displays. "There," Theron said suddenly, pointing to a sequence in the pattern. "It's not just mathematics, it's music. The frequencies align with the harmonic scale my people use in our ceremonial songs." Jade's eyes lit up. "And here, these intervals match Earth's classical musical theories. Bach would have understood this perfectly." She looked at Theron with growing excitement. "They're not testing us separately, they're seeing if we can find the connections between our cultures." Their revelation came just as the energy pattern began to shift, becoming more complex and intense. Warning alerts blared as the ship's sensors detected massive power fluctuations. "We need to respond," Theron said urgently. "But how?" Jade made a quick decision. "If it's about harmony between cultures, let's show them exactly that." She ordered both ships to adjust their shield frequencies to match the mathematical musical pattern they discovered, but with a twist, each ship would provide half of the necessary frequencies, creating a harmony only possible through their cooperation. As their shields resonated in concert, something remarkable happened. The Void Seeker's energy pattern began to synchronize with their shields, creating a breathtaking display of light and energy that rippled through space like a cosmic symphony. Theron's hand found Jade's in the tense moment of waiting. His touch sent a warm current through her arm, and she realized with startling clarity that their personal connection might be just as significant as the diplomatic one they were forging between their peoples. The lead Void Seeker vessel finally broke its silence, transmitting a message in a language that somehow combined mathematical principles with musical harmonies. As their computers worked to decode it, Theron's grip on Jade's hand tightened. "They're not here to judge us," he translated, his voice filled with wonder. "They're here to invite us to join something greater. Both our species, together." Jade looked at their joined hands, human and Lacerian, and understood that they stood at the threshold of something unprecedented in the history of either of their peoples. The Void Seekers hadn't come to test their weapons or technology, but to measure the capacity of their hearts to bridge the vast distances between their worlds. As the message continued to unfold, Jade and Theron shared a look that spoke volumes about the journey ahead of them, one that would challenge not just their diplomatic skills or their courage, but their growing feelings for each other in a universe that suddenly seemed both larger and more intimate than ever before. The invitation from the Void Seekers came with a price. As Jade and Theron stood before the combined crew of both vessels in the Horizon's main conference hall, the weight of their decision pressed heavily upon them. The ancient race had offered to share knowledge beyond their comprehension, but they required a joint expedition into their dimensional gateway, a journey from which there might be no return. "The risk is substantial," Jade addressed the assembled crews, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "We're looking for volunteers only. No one will be ordered to participate in this mission." Theron stepped forward, his ceremonial robes catching the light. "What we learn could transform both our civilizations, but we must be united in this endeavor." The Void Seekers were clear: we succeed together, or not at all. The room erupted in discussion as humans and Lacerians debated among themselves. Jade watched with pride as members of both species engaged in earnest conversation, the barriers between them seeming to dissolve in the face of this unprecedented opportunity. Later, in the privacy of the ship's arboretum, Jade found Theron studying the earth plants with fascination. The artificial lighting cast a soft glow on his silvery skin, making him appear almost ethereal among the greenery. "Your people's ability to recreate natural environments in space is remarkable," he said as she approached. "We have similar gardens, but they're purely functional, medicinal plants, air purification. This." He gestured to a blooming rose, "This is art." Jade smiled, watching how delicately he touched the flower's petals. "Beauty has always been as important to us as function. Sometimes more so." She hesitated before adding, "Like your people's ceremonial robes. They're not just clothing, are they?" Theron turned to face her, his expression softening. "They're a reflection of our inner state. The patterns shift with our emotions." He glanced down at his own robes, which rippled with subtle iridescent patterns. "Right now, they're probably revealing more than I should show." The air between them grew charged with unspoken feelings. Jade took a step closer, noticing how the patterns in his robes became more intense. "And what are they revealing, Your Highness?" "Please," he said softly, "when we're alone, call me Theron." Before he could continue, the ship's AI announced an urgent transmission from the Void Seekers. They rushed to the command center, the moment broken but not forgotten. The message was unlike anything they'd received before, a series of complex temporal coordinates and what appeared to be a warning. Theron's face grew grave as he studied the data. "They're showing us something that exists outside our normal time-space," he explained, his fingers dancing over the holographic display. "A threat that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This is why they need us. Our two species together possess a unique combination of abilities they believe can help combat this threat." Jade leaned in to study the coordinates, acutely aware of Theron's proximity. "What kind of threat are we talking about?" "They call them the Entropy Weavers," Theron translated, his voice hushed. Beings that consume reality itself, breaking down the barriers between dimensions. The Void Seekers have been fighting them for eons, gathering allies from across different realities. And now they want us to join their fight, Jade concluded, understanding dawning in her eyes. That's why they tested our ability to work together. They need species who can overcome their differences and unite against a common enemy. Theron nodded, his robes swirling with complex patterns that seemed to mirror the dimensional diagrams before them. The gateway they've offered to open, it leads to their primary staging ground. A place where representatives from dozens of civilizations gather to coordinate the defense of reality itself. As they discussed the implications, crew members from both ships began volunteering for the expedition. The sight of humans and Lysarians working together, preparing for a journey into the unknown, filled Jade with a sense of purpose she'd never felt before. That evening, she found Theron on the observation deck, watching the Void Seeker ships as they maintained their geometric formation around Neptune. The view was breathtaking, but Jade found herself watching him instead, noting how the starlight seemed to dance across his features. "I've requested to lead the expedition personally," she told him, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. Theron turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I assumed you would. Just as I've already informed my government that I will be joining you. Is that wise?" Jade asked, genuine concern in her voice. "You're a prince of your people." "I am," he agreed, then added softly, "but I'm also someone who believes that some things are worth any risk." His robes shifted color subtly, taking on a deep, resonant blue that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. Jade understood the unspoken meaning in his words and the display of his robes. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the cosmic dance of ships and stars beyond the viewport, both aware that their relationship had crossed a line from which there was no return. As if in response to their mutual realization, the Void Seeker ships began to move, their formation shifting to create what appeared to be a doorway in space itself. The gateway they had promised was beginning to open, and with it, the promise of an adventure that would test not only their courage and leadership but also the growing feelings between them that neither could deny any longer. The gateway pulsed before them, a shimmering tear in the fabric of spacetime. The joint Earth-Lysarian expedition had been prepared in record time, with 30 volunteers from each species aboard the specially modified shuttle. Jade stood at the helm, with Theron beside her as co-commander, both of them watching the swirling energies that would take them beyond known space. "Final systems check complete," Lieutenant Reed reported from her station. "All modifications are holding stable." The shuttle had been reinforced with a combination of Earth's most advanced shielding technology and Lysarian dimensional stabilizers. The hybrid systems represented the first true collaboration between their species, created specifically for this mission. "Last chance to back out," Jade said softly to Theron, though she already knew his answer. His robes rippled with determination, taking on a deep crimson hue. "We face this together, remember?" The Void Seekers' final transmission had been clear. Through the gateway lay their central command, a vast space station existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. There, representatives from countless civilizations coordinated their efforts against the entropy weavers. "All hands, prepare for dimensional transition," Jade announced over the comm. She took a deep breath, then gave the command. "Take us in." The shuttle crossed the threshold, and reality itself seemed to flex around them. The view through the forward viewport defied description, streams of light in colors that shouldn't exist, geometric patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves infinitely. Several crew members gasped, and Jade heard someone retching in the back. Then, suddenly, they emerged into somewhere else. Before them floated a structure that challenged everything they thought they knew about architecture and physics. The Void Seeker Central Command Station existed in at least 5 dimensions at once, parts of it disappearing and reappearing as they shifted through different planes of reality. By the first light, Theron whispered, his scientist's mind clearly struggling to process what they were seeing. Their wonder was interrupted by an incoming transmission. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the bridge, a being composed of crystalline structures that constantly rearranged themselves. Representatives of Earth and Lysar, the being spoke, its voice somehow transmitting directly into their minds. "We welcome you to the nexus of realities." As they docked with the impossible station, Jade and Theron led their crew through corridors that seemed to branch into infinity. They passed beings of pure energy, crystalline entities, and species that defied categorization. Each group they encountered was paired, two different species working in perfect harmony. The crystalline being, who introduced itself as the coordinator, led them to a vast chamber where hundreds of paired species gathered around a central holographic display. The image it showed chilled Jade to her core, vast swaths of reality being consumed by what looked like living darkness. "The entropy weavers grow stronger," the coordinator explained. "They seek to unravel the fundamental forces that bind reality together. Each paired species here brings unique perspectives and abilities to our defense. Humans, with their adaptability and intuitive problem-solving, combined with Lysarian dimensional mathematics and harmony manipulation, may be key to our next major offensive." As the coordinator detailed the situation, Jade felt Theron's hand brush against hers. The contact sent a spark through her that had nothing to do with dimensional energy. She glanced at him, seeing in his eyes the same mix of wonder and determination she felt. Their moment was interrupted by alarms that seemed to sound from every dimension at once. The central display shifted, showing a massive breach in their defensive lines. The entropy weavers had broken through. "We need your decision now," the coordinator's mental voice carried urgency. "Will you join us? Once committed, there is no turning back. Your lives will be bound to this war, to each other, and to the preservation of all reality." Jade looked at their crew, humans and Lysarians standing together, ready to face whatever came next. Then she looked at Theron, whose robes had taken on a pattern she'd never seen before, swirling with colors that seemed to echo the dimensional energies around them. "Together?" she asked him, extending her hand. He took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining. "Always." They turned to the coordinator as one. "We accept," they said in unison. What happened next would reshape their understanding of everything: love, duty, reality itself. The coordinator guided them to a chamber where other paired commanders underwent the bonding ritual, a process that would link them at a quantum level, enhancing their ability to coordinate in battle against the entropy weavers. As they prepared for the ritual, Theron turned to Jade. "There's something you should know," he said, his robes pulsing with emotions she was learning to read. "In my culture, this kind of bond, it's deeper than any political alliance. It's—" "I know," Jade interrupted softly, reaching up to touch his face. "I've learned enough about your people to understand what this means. And I want you to know, I'm not doing this just for duty, or for the survival of our peoples." The patterns in his robes synchronized with her heartbeat as he leaned closer. "Nor am I," he whispered. Around them, reality itself seemed to hold its breath as human and Lysarian, woman and prince, prepared to forge a bond that would echo across dimensions. The war against the entropy weavers awaited them, but in this moment, all that mattered was the space between their hearts, and the bridge they were about to build across it. The quantum bonding ritual transformed everything. As Jade opened her eyes, she could feel Theron's presence in her mind, not as an intrusion, but as a harmony completing her own thoughts. His emotions flowed through her, wonder, determination, and a deep, unwavering love that took her breath away. "The bond is complete," the coordinator announced, its crystalline form refracting light in celebration. "You are now ready to join the defense of reality itself." Their first battle came sooner than expected. The entropy weavers had launched a major offensive, targeting a cluster of young civilizations in a neighboring dimension. The newly bonded command team rushed to their modified shuttle, now enhanced with technology from a dozen different species. Through their bond, Jade and Theron moved as one. She could access his intuitive understanding of dimensional mathematics, while he drew upon her tactical experience and quick decision-making. Their crew watched in amazement as human and Lysarian systems synchronized perfectly under their joint command. Multiple breaches detected, Lieutenant Reed reported as they approached the battle zone. The Weavers are trying to unravel the dimensional barriers. Through the viewport, they could see the enemy, vast, writhing masses of anti-reality that consumed everything they touched. But now, with their enhanced perception, Jade and Theron could see the pattern behind the chaos. There, they said simultaneously, their voices harmonizing. They're not random attacks. They're creating a resonance cascade. Drawing upon their combined knowledge, they developed a strategy that had never been attempted before. Using Lysarian harmonic principles filtered through human intuition for chaos theory, they began generating counterfrequencies to the Weaver's dimensional attacks. All ships, synchronize your dimensional fields with our signal, Jade commanded, while Theron transmitted the complex mathematical formulae needed. Around them, vessels from dozens of civilizations moved into formation, creating a multidimensional lattice of energy. The battle that followed would be recorded in the histories of 1,000 worlds. The combined fleet, led by the human Lysarian team, didn't just fight the entropy Weavers, they rewrote the laws of reality around them. Each ship became a note in a vast cosmic symphony, generating harmonies that strengthened the very fabric of spacetime. But the Weavers were ancient and powerful. As the battle reached its crescendo, a massive void opened behind enemy lines, their dimensional stronghold, the source of their power. That's their anchor point, Theron realized, the knowledge flowing through their bond. If we can seal it, we can end this war, Jade finished. They looked at each other, understanding what needed to be done. Their shuttle had been designed to channel the combined power of their bonded consciousness. If they could get close enough to the void, they could use that power to collapse it. But doing so would expose them to unimaginable forces. No words were needed between them. Through their bond, they shared a lifetime of feelings in an instant. Their crew, understanding the plan through their own human Lysarian partnerships, stood ready. For all reality, Jade and Theron said together, and drove their ship straight into the heart of chaos. The void fought them, trying to unmake their very existence. But the bond between them proved stronger than entropy itself. Love, it seemed, was a force that even reality-destroying entities couldn't unravel. In a burst of light that rippled across dimensions, they sealed the breach. The entropy Weavers, cut off from their source of power, began to dissipate. Throughout the battlefield, cheers erupted in 1,000 different languages. Their shuttle emerged, badly damaged but intact. As emergency crews from the Nexus approached to assist, Jade and Theron remained in their command chairs, hands clasped, their bond humming with shared emotion. The war isn't completely over, the coordinator told them later, as they stood again in the Great Hall of the Nexus. There will always be threats to reality. But today, you've shown us all something new, that the power of connection, of two different peoples coming together, can overcome even the most fundamental forces of destruction. In the years that followed, Jade and Theron became legends among both their peoples. They established the first joint Earth-Lysarian Academy, training other bonded pairs to defend reality. Their love story became a symbol of hope, proof that the distances between stars and species could be bridged by the power of the heart. On the anniversary of their victory, they stood together on the observation deck of their new home, a station orbiting a star exactly halfway between Earth and Lysar. Theron's robes shimmered with the deep, steady colors of lasting love, while Jade's eyes reflected the starlight they had helped to preserve. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if the Void Seekers hadn't brought us together?" Theron smiled, the expression he had learned from her years ago now as natural as breathing. "They didn't bring us together, my love. They merely opened the door. We chose to walk through it." Through their bond, they shared the contentment of that moment, knowing that their story would inspire generations across multiple dimensions. They had proved that love truly was the strongest force in any reality, capable of crossing the vastness of space, bridging the gap between species, and even holding the universe itself together. As they watched the stars together, their bond humming with shared joy, they knew that this wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. For wherever there were barriers to be crossed or differences to be bridged, their story would be told, of a human commander and a Lasarian prince who had found, in each other, something greater than themselves, and in doing so, had helped save all of reality.